what are we going to do from now? And just a couple of things, how we're going to tackle the next 3 months, really. Make sure we get to the unlockdown, to the magic June the 21st, and survive, because it would have been a terrible waste to have got through 12 months and not managed to finish the job. So I'm going to ask Anthony, who's got more experience than any of us about retail and hospitality, as to how they've coped over the last 12 months, remarkably, and what are the plans going forward, and what key things have you got for us, Anthony, to help people plan for the future? Over to you.
Thanks very much, Nick. Hall and Woodhouse, for those who don't know us, we've got about 180 pubs spread across southern England, from Bristol down to Exeter, across to London, down to Brighton. We brew Badger beer in Blandford in Dorset. We brew about 20 million pints of that a year. And we also have a soft drink brand called Rio, and we sell about 45 million cans of Rio a year. Just to put some context into around the sort of reopening, hospitality has obviously been in the eye of the storm, and as have many other industries, and some even in worse shape. You think of the sort of air travel companies, etc. Just to give you context, we're going to lose twice the amount of money that we made in the year prior to the pandemic. So it's pretty painful, to put it mildly. Government support has been very generous for our industry, and to an extent I think it's been more generous to our industry than perhaps some of the other ones who've been very badly affected as well, and we're very conscious of that. We've had team who've effectively been pretty much sitting on their hands for over a year. Certainly our London pubs have hardly opened meaningfully over the last year. And I think that is important in terms of where their heads are at. I think there's also a lot of team that have disappeared. I mean, a stat for you from London, they reckon about the population of London has fallen by about 700,000 since the start of the pandemic. A large percentage of those would have worked in hospitality and then would have gone home. So that's something important. And also our industry has big seasonal shifts in team as well, and obviously we'll be reopening coming into a busy time. So that's another context to think of. Where's the consumer? Very difficult to tell. A lot of people talk about pent-up demand. They're talking about £3 trillion worth of savings across the world. They're talking about £50 billion in the UK. That may be the case. How's that money going to be spent? But I don't know about you, but it still feels odd going out. And I think people are going to feel a bit fearful of crowds and things like that. So, I think there's some real uncertainty there. I think how you get through the pandemic depends really on three things. It depends really the state you were in when you went into it. That's not only in terms of the viability of the business. I mean, in our industry, I think the stat was that the top 100 urban casual dining restaurant chains had a combined loss of about £90 million. So urban casual dining was in trouble before the pandemic, and obviously the pandemic has just accelerated that. So the viability of a business beforehand, I think, is important. The other, I think, is the structure of your business. Not only in terms of the balance sheet and the amount of debt, etc., but obviously the big one in terms of our industry is freehold versus leasehold. We're in a very privileged position that we own all our pubs, so to hunker down and see it out is one thing. If you're a leaseholder being charged rent, you're effectively in the hands of your landlord, and the experience that operators have had between different landlords is very stark. Some have said, right, tough, you've got to pay everything. Others, you've had to pay nothing. And I'm pleased to say that, for the pubs that we rent out to our business partners, they haven't had to pay rent when they've been shut. The second point is what you do actually during the pandemic. Now, we were lucky because we have a big off-trade business. We sell sort of 16 odd million bottles of Badger through the supermarkets. Our trade on that side of it has been up about 40% throughout the period of time. So that's been great. So the brewery has been working at full tilt. which, although is a very small part of our business in actual numbers terms, to actually have the beating heart of your business operating has been a real positive for us. And it's been something for everyone to focus on, which has been great. We've continued to do stuff in our communities. One of our purpose as a business is to make people's day, which is obviously slightly difficult when the pub's closed, but also to enrich our communities. And therefore our teams have just, I mean, it's been humbling actually what some of our teams have gone up to. Whether it's from volunteering to one guy setting the world record for the longest pub quiz ever, and at 37 hours, I mean, he was catatonic at the end of it, raising over 60,000 quid, and ending up being honoured by the Queen in the New Year's Honours List, which is fabulous, which is great. I think the other thing is how people have treated team. A lot of businesses talk about values and how important team are and all the rest of it, but you can really judge how people, whether people mean that or not, is how they treat their team in the difficult times. And that's particularly important in terms of that context as to whether your workforce has disappeared or not, because I think a lot of people will discover that their team have disappeared for whatever reason, found jobs elsewhere and don't want to come back. We're lucky enough that we surveyed 1,000 of our team who work in our pubs, and all but 25 are coming back, which is fabulous. And I think a portion of that is to do, you know, we actually shut our pubs before we were told to, because we didn't think our team was safe, or we certainly were uncertain as to whether they were safe or not. And hopefully, you know, people feel we've looked after them properly. Our business partners, I've mentioned before, they didn't have to pay rent, and we very much didn't have to repay any of their debts or anything like that. Now, that's not only the right thing to do, it's the right commercial thing to do as well, because clearly from their point of view, if they're coming out of this in a strong place, they can trade positively, begin to pay rent, begin to buy our beer, etc., etc. So it's the right thing morally, but also commercially as well. And we did that during the financial crisis. And I've also got a board minute from 1932, which says our tenants are having a very difficult time, we should subsidise them. So this is nothing new for us as a company. It's something that we've always done down through the generations. And the third thing is in relation to innovation. I think it's quite easy in this sort of situation just to go, it's a wall of, it's all too difficult. And it's been stunning how quickly we've been able to do innovation, stuff we've been meaning to get to for donkey's years and never got them. I'm ashamed to say we never really got to. Actually, the lockdown has allowed us to really focus on stuff and get stuff done. And there's some big learnings for us that's come out of that. And then finally, how you come out of it. This is going to be interesting, because I think a lot of it depends, one, on the state that you're in coming out of it, secondly, your reading of your consumer or your client or whatever. And for us, we are looking to come out of it as positively as we possibly can. That means we are investing a huge amount of money in our pubs to make sure that when they're open, when people go back into them, they feel up to speed. Obviously not only clean things, but well decorated, in good order. We're investing in our offer in terms of the food and drink offer, etc. Because when people first go back to the pub, we want them to think, hey, this is an experience I've missed. Not an experience, oh God, actually, it was never really very good in the first place. That's the two ends of the extreme. So we've really got to make sure that when people come back, actually, they really welcome what they experience. And then finally, and most importantly, we're investing really heavily in our team. And for us, so much of that is waking them up out of hibernation. Because it's going to be, if you think that their role is providing hospitality to guests day by day, minute by minute, and actually they've been starved of that for over a year, it's going to take time to get them up and running doing that. We're retraining them. Every single person is being retrained in terms of hospitality, in terms of product knowledge, all those different things. So really, really important. And also obviously helping our business partners for the pubs that we actually rent out rather than run ourselves, is helping them reopen and not overburdening them with debts or this, that, and giving them as much support as possible so they can focus their business on doing the same things that we're trying to do. From our point of view, obviously, we're incredibly excited about reopening, but we're not underestimating how difficult it is going to be. It's going to be difficult for everyone, and we're just going to have to work really, really hard at that. Unfortunately, there are going to be many businesses within our industry that are going to make it. Those that are still there, many of them have substantial debts, rents outstanding and all the rest of it. And at some point, you know, the chickens are going to come home to roost there. A huge amount of capacity. It needed to an extent, as I said before, but there's a huge amount of capacity that's going to be ripped out of urban casual dining in particular, which very much overextended itself. In terms of dates and things, you know, it's nice to get people back into gardens and things from mid-April. That sort of we'll be able to open probably about half our estate, you know, with sizable gardens and putting up tents, pray for decent weather and things. You don't make a great deal for operating at that sort of capacity, but it would be nice to get going. The purpose was very much beginning to get the machine working again. Hopefully that will then lead to opening up indoors in May with things like the rule of 6, which is fine for us generally because our pubs tend to be very spacious and we can cope with that. And in a way, we quite like the fact that it will be like that to start off with, because I think that will encourage those people who perhaps do feel a bit unsafe to come back out. I think if we went straight back into sort of free for all, then actually some of our guest base would, particularly the older demographic, may feel a bit nervous about that. And then the date in June of basically everything back to normal. I don't believe that date. I'd be very, very surprised if it happens, but you know, let's hope it would. And then the other variable is Dorset this summer. You know, there is absolutely no question that we're going to be seriously rammed. And what we're desperate to do is make sure that the experience of guests coming to our pubs is one that they treasure, that it makes their day, not that we're sort of swamped by too many people. So, and the whole tourism industry in Dorset and the councils are working very, very hard to try and make sure that we control that and don't get the scenes that we got last summer, you know, whether it's at Durdle Door or Bournemouth Beach or whatever. So that's me. I hope that was helpful, Nick, and there we go. Of course, I'll answer any questions that anyone has.
Fantastic, thanks, Ian. It's just a whole broad scope of all the things. It's fantastic that I think it covers really a lot of the points that I wanted to get brought out, and you've managed to do it all. So we can all stop now, but I think it covered everything. So if there are any questions that come up in the chat, I'll if I can grab you in a minute as they come up. So can I just ask Heidi? I know that Heidi's been here through thick and thin. I usually push her to minute 59 and then ask her for a comment, but I think she actually wrote something today, because I think View HR put something out about getting people back into work and some of the legalities and some of the issues around furlough. So could you just spend a couple of minutes or read your script on some issues around HR and getting everybody back into work, please, Heidi?
Of course. I feel quite grateful to go after Anthony, because basically he's raised everything that I was going to talk about in terms of what businesses should be doing as an exemplary leadership, as someone's put in the chat. You know, there's so many points that you've made there that I'd just like to highlight again, because they are so important. You know, we have this magic date of June the 21st, and everyone's kind of excited about that date and whether it happens or not. You know, obviously the extension of furlough to the end of September makes me very dubious about the June date and what's actually going to happen at that point. But if we think about the people in this, you know, and I've just come off a session on positivity and the impact of being positive and nurturing and supportive of your employees and the impact that has on their productivity. If we think about that for a minute, we've had a lot of people that have been through an incredibly different year. So we've got, you know, furloughed, non-furloughed, working, non-working, working in the office, working at home, communicated to, not communicated to, paid, not paid, lost the job, got a new job. You know, this whole plethora of experience, and everybody's been through some form of change, whether it be personal change, environment change, work change. And I don't think we should underestimate the impact that that has on people's performance, people's motivation, people's mental health, all of those things wrapped up. And so we can't just expect people to come back into work, you know, like they've come off a weekend. It's not been a weekend, it's been a year of catastrophe for a lot of people. And some people, maybe the change is not so big, but most people, there has been significant change. And the other thing is the leadership group that kind of are on this call today, you've been through and felt and experienced every part of that change. And a lot of your employees have not been exposed to that. So the impact for them is, you know, they're kind of in a bit of a vacuum. So making sure that you set clear direction, you talk really clearly about what the company's visions, goals, expectations, requirements, demands are. You do the retraining, you make sure they understand what their tasks are, because their tasks will have absolutely changed as well. You know, maybe it's a minute change, but fundamentally something in the way that they work will be different. And being really clear about that expectation and helping them understand that as well. And, you know, we've all talked about my least favourite word, pivoting, and how that kind of has been across the last year. Maybe you haven't pivoted, you know, but actually maybe you have changed your strategy, or your goals have changed, or maybe you should change your strategy and your goals should change. So I really recommend using the plethora of resources that are available. You know, you've got great people on this call today. We've got the Dorset Growth Hub, we've got the Dorset Chamber, we've got the LEP, we've got all of these things that are offering free guidance from strategic leaders, thought leaders, coaches, all of these amazing things. And I urge people to use those resources now, not in June, not in September, when we're already open and it's already carnage. Let's make sure we use those resources and make sure we're ready to get back into the work environment in the most productive way possible. The other thing, I work in HR and employment law. If there are disputes, employee problems, contract changes, furlough, non-furlough, resignations, redundancies, if those things need to happen, I urge you not to leave them. Don't kick the can down the road. If you know those things are going to happen, try and make those decisions early, because it's better for everybody if those decisions are made properly, with enough time, and done in the right way. So I'm a bit preachy at the end, but I don't mean to. But, you know, I think it's a fantastic case study that Woodhouse provided for us. And Anthony, I really commend you and the team on what you're delivering, because it's literally best case, best in practice activity that you've been doing. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's really, really great to see that in real life. I can say it, but seeing it from somebody who's delivering it is much better to hear. So that's it from me, Nick.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you. And thank you for all your support over the last 12 months, because you've always been here, and nearly always late, but always here.
I always have a 10 o'clock first. That's the problem.
Just, we did touch on one thing earlier on. I haven't mentioned that grants came in the finance thing, and a lot of grants are available, and a lot of grants have been available. There have been LRSG and ARG and a reopening grant. Just the guidance on the grants for reopening your business or restarting, the guidance has just come to the councils last week. And so that grant probably won't be with anybody in anything less than a month. But it may well be a reapplication for anybody who may have got the grant the first time round. But do keep your eyes on both the websites. Both Bournemouth and Dorset are saying keep your eyes peeled for when those things come out. They will be coming, but they're a while away. And there's also the recovery loan scheme, which is to replace bounce back loan and C-bills. There are some details. I think Mary's had an email from British Business Bank this morning. It's still a bit vague. It starts on the 6th of April. And as part of what we're saying, you need to make sure, and I will reiterate this at the end, you need to make sure you've got cash available to start trading again. It's no point in getting to the date and finding that you haven't got stock and you can't afford stock, or you you can't afford to take on a new order because you can't afford or you haven't got stuff ready. So really now, I know I always preach about this, but look at your finances. Make sure you've got enough cash to open up and start again, because if you haven't, you're going to get to the start line and you literally won't have any blocks or running shoes. So please look now, and the recovery loan scheme, we'll put the link in, but it's still a bit vague. So I think we need to just keep an eye on that one as well. And as soon as we get more details, we'll put it out. I just want to, and the other thing that we said was that businesses will change. It may be that now you think, as we have, that we don't need an office all the time, and there may be flexible working might be something, because I think we all miss the socializing and the mixing. And I just wonder whether, Sharon, you could just tell us how Eagle Labs works and how that flexible working would work in somewhere like Eagle Labs. What kind of offers are there available?
Thank you. Yes. Good morning, everybody. And I will preface this with, we are really fortunate in BCP and even wider Dorset that there are a number of spaces where you can approach flexible or co-working or short-term contracts to make that return to working away from our home offices and bedrooms come to life. I can only talk specifically about the Eagle Lab in Westbourne and what we have in place. Barclays have made a decision that the 29th is the indicator that we can reopen the space. But even for those current members we have, that's been accompanied by a recommendation that the roadmap also still talks that we should, if at all possible, work from home. So we're not expecting to be overwhelmed with people in the space as we return immediately. My advice would be, there's a real possibility here of supporting those team members who need to get out of the house or need to work through without the commitment of long contracts, rents, and restarting your office rentals if you've been able to avoid paying for them over the last time, whilst we have uncertainty about how long or how rapidly this roadmap is going to take to get us all operating fully in those times. And seeing that flexibility in service, it's also looking for what there is beyond a desk or an office rental. So for myself, I know that what we're bringing back is very much more of a pay-as-you-go model. So opening up with some guidance around it that allows people, instead of booking a full-time desk, to actually make use of the space or the spaces that they need as they need it. So unlikely that people will be working from the space 5 or even 7 days a week to run the business. More likely that they may opt for a club style membership where they have 5 days in the month when they want to book a desk. And with that, they may want to use a meeting room once or twice. Lots of safety precautions in place, which all of us are thinking about with our workplaces. So it's still death by sign in the lab at the moment. Reminding us about social distancing, plenty of sanitizer stations. And it does mean that our actual numbers for capacity is reduced. What we are seeing is it just needs people to plan ahead a little bit. So we're really happy to welcome teams to meet together and to book a meeting room. We just need to make sure that we don't get a phone call at 9 o'clock in the morning to accommodate people at 10 that we know the day before. And that's partly just because we have to ask permission to store people's contact details so that we can let them know if we do have a mishap and somebody's taken unwell. Very much, I'm eager to get out of my bedroom and to be able to have those face-to-face conversations. I've not been vaccinated yet, but looking forward to those things there. And I think in all of that, it's also recognising that we're not jumping back into what we were experiencing at this time a year ago. So part of our offering that is more than a desk is events and the opportunities to connect people. An amount of that will be continuing to happen in either a virtual context or a hybrid context. And for us as a team who staff those spaces, it's been wonderful to hear Anthony talking about his organisation and the thought that they've put into that. Again, I feel really well looked after for the last 12 months. But I also know that the expectation is not that I will staff the space 5 days a week, which was the expectation pre-pandemic. So our members and people who use the space will not necessarily see 3 of us staffing it, but more likely 2 at a time, so that we are all also looking after ourselves and our families as we transition back. I'm really happy to answer any questions that anybody has, and I know Nick will let me know as those come through in the chat. But we're looking forward to welcoming people back, but very much watching what the roadmap says and being aware that the situation is not the same for everybody, and therefore much easier to organise short-term contracts or pay-as-you-go to make it easier for people. And I would expect the other co-working spaces around to do similar things, because that's what people need right now.
That's great. Thanks, Sharon. So please put a link up or your contact details up in the chat so that people can, because I mean, definitely, I think we would be using you, because it's important that we get together as a team, but just not all the time. So, and I say, I'm sure that applies to a lot of us who've got small teams, but who do need to get out. And Anthony alluded to most of the questions. And I think being ready to get back is really quite difficult for all of us. So just, I've got 5 sort of headline things to say at the end that I think we ought to focus on before we go ahead and plan this next 6 weeks or so. But Dorothy, are there any issues sort of that you want to raise about things that people need to be looking at the moment, before, if they've got issues around anything technical and trading wise that they ought to think about before they career into the next phase of this year?
Nick, I think you and Anthony and Heidi have very much highlighted what needs to be done, which is what we've talked about previously, is look at your numbers, make sure you've got cash ready to go, make sure your employees are all up and ready to go. So very much getting everybody prepared. So it's being prepared. If you've got the VAT and you can't pay it from last year, use the opportunity to pay back over the next 11-12 months to HM Revenue and Customs. There's no interest being charged, so that will help people as well. So spread out as much as you can. Look at your C-bills and your bounce back loan payments. How long do you want to take to do it? Make sure it's as long as possible to make you as comfortable as possible in your business. It's talking to your accountants very early, making sure that you know your numbers, because if you don't know your numbers, who does? And then it's looking out, what do you need to support? So as Nick said, you need cash in 6 weeks' time. Start now. Don't start in 6 weeks' time, because the last thing you want to do is come and talk to someone like me. Yes, I'm very nice, very accommodating, but I am an insolvency practitioner. I will be talking to people, unfortunately, who haven't done what we've talked about, who haven't prepared. And in 6 weeks' time, we'll need to talk to someone about closing their business down and doing what Heidi was talking about, which is making sure that their employees are told early enough as to what's going to happen. So there's a lot that can be done. I saw something yesterday on LinkedIn which gives me hope about going forward. There have been 500,000 new businesses set up in the last year. So there's a lot of people out there with a lot of hope, expectation about what trading is going to happen. So as Anthony said, Dorset's going to be rammed for a couple of months. Maybe we don't like it, but hey, that's going to help our local industry, local tourism and local economy, which will get us going for the rest of the year and into beyond. All I would say is talk to people. There's as Heidi I think said as well, there's a lot of people on here who've got a lot of experience, knowledge, expertise. As we said, there's the Dorset Growth Hub. the Chamber, Dorset Chamber, the LEP, there's a lot of people with a lot of experience speak. And if you can talk, and the other thing I saw, if I may talk about, is get support for yourself. That is important as well, because your mental health needs to be at tip top when you go back in with all of your staff. And if you get yourself in the right frame of mind, you will be good for you and your clients and your staff and your business.
Thank you very much, Dorothy. Thank you for that. It's, again, very practical advice as usual. Now, bizarrely, I just set out 5 things that I thought were key, and the speaker, Anthony mainly, but all Dorothy and Heidi and Sharon have really mentioned them all. And if you follow what Hull and Woodhouse are doing, you can't go far wrong. But Mary, if you could just pop those up and we'll just go through them very briefly. We've mentioned them all before, but just sort of 5 major points. So make sure you've got cash or credit ready for the Unlockdown. So you need to be ready to go. If you're not, you're going to miss a trick. You're going to suddenly find you've got there and you didn't know what to do next. So make sure you look at your numbers. If you need more money, check when the grants are coming. Make sure you're in as good a financial position as you can be. It's been a difficult year, but as the farmer said, tighten your belt and hide your checkbook and you'll get through somehow, which I think a lot of you, well, you're all here, so you all have. And make sure, again, was brought up again by Anthony and Heidi, make sure your staff are ready to go. And you've recruited who you need. There are people looking for work, and make sure your staff are aware of the changes in your business, what you need from them, because it is quite difficult. People have got into habits of not getting up in the morning and, oh, can I be bothered, and all that stuff. So you need to work with your team to keep them motivated. And as Dorothy said, make sure you're up to date or you've got agreements with HMRC. Don't leave your tax. You know, it has got to be paid, and you can pay it interest free without penalties or harm if you arrange it. If you leave a pile of brown envelopes in the corner, the only result will be a disaster. So please talk to them now while you've got this bit of time. Just out of curiosity, get familiar with Brexit. If you're going to export, get familiar with Brexit paperwork and restrictions. Get onto the LEP, get a £2,000 grant, go on to courses, learn how to do paperwork. We can trade with Europe. It will be difficult, but if you want to trade, if you want to export, you've got to do your homework. So spend a bit of time, but there's a £2,000 grant. I think you need to go through the LEP or maybe the Chamber, I'm not sure, but there is a grant available. Make use of that and talk to DIT. And again, as Dorothy just said, make sure you're ready. I mean, I used to drive to Bournemouth every day and think nothing of it, but I did it the other day and it felt like an enormous journey. So things that I used to do as a matter of course, I'm going, oh, really? Do I really want to do that? So think about you've been stuck in your house. You can just go and have a cup of coffee, go downstairs, read the paper, watch the news. You won't be able to do that maybe. You've got to be firing up your staff. You've got to be all over it. So make sure you're ready. And if you're worried about stuff, we've talked about well-being and we've talked about how it can have affected you and the worries you've got. Make sure you're ready to take it on because you are driving your businesses. You're the one that needs to be ready as well as everyone else. So good luck with everything. It's going to be another 3 weeks before we've got Easter to go through, and then we'll be closer to the end. So thank you all for being here, and I hope it's helpful. Anthony, it's fantastic, and I can't wait to go to the Grasshopper again, which is my favourite haunt. So we're looking forward to that. And thank all of you, and good luck with everything. And we'll be back in about 3 weeks to see where we are and what's changed and what information. We'll probably try and give you an update with an email around the grants and what's happening with that in Bournemouth and Dorset in the meantime. But good luck with everything, and good luck. Well done for getting to here. And thanks, Anthony, Heidi, and Dorothy. It's brilliant. And Sharon, thank you very much. Thank you.